Chapter 1248. Seeing his opponent condense such terrifying energy out of thin air, the god-fiend's gaze turned unprecedentedly solemn. He had already sensed something was amiss. Although his opponent's cultivation was inferior to his, he had taken a different path from the myriad of Taoist arts. He could actually borrow the energy of the universe to make up for his lack of cultivation. He was indeed a figure who had found his own way. In other words, this vast universe could provide him with an endless source of resistance. It could not be viewed with common sense. He no longer underestimated Bai Changchun and naturally would not sit and wait for the other party to attack. He pushed his palm behind him and retracted the waistcoat that wrapped around his body. The huge black hole behind him suddenly surged and disappeared, causing shock waves that were like ripples in the universe. A planet that had been sucked in by the black hole's gravity did not lose its inertia and continued to fly over. The demon god grabbed at it from afar, and the high-speed flying planet suddenly stopped in the void. As the demon god waved his arm and threw it out, the starry sky suddenly shot toward Bai Changchun, who was wrapped in a huge ball of light. The huge white ball of light shot out at the same time, leaving a long white stream of light in the universe. With a boom, it directly destroyed the incoming planet into dust that shot in all directions like an exploding khaki-colored firework. The white stream of light did not lose its momentum. It bloomed from the blooming yellow dust and continued charging toward the god-fiend. The god-fiend's lips curled into a sneer. No matter how powerful the condensed energy was or how destructive it was, he could not just stand there and wait for his opponent to attack. At this speed, he could not be hurt at all. However, just as he sneered, the white ball of light suddenly expanded and rapidly shrank. It blew out countless streams of light, and the huge ball of light instantly emptied out like a dense meteor shower that covered a large area of the starry sky. Everyone in the Yuchen Palace gasped at the same time. Looking at this unavoidable attack, they held their breaths, waiting for the god-fiend to be severely injured even if he did not die. F***CK. An upgraded version of the lost immortal finger. Yu Qianzhou's expression froze. Wu Lixue was speechless. The sudden change caught the god-fiend off guard. He could not even teleport in time, let alone tear open a spatial rift to escape. With a furious cry, the fiend celestial exploded, turning into thousands of ghostly shadows and slithering out of the gaps between the countless streams of light. Countless light figures flew into the depths of the universe. Some unlucky planets were hit by them and immediately collapsed. Devil seals the world. The countless phantoms that emerged from the light and shadow suddenly merged into one in the starry sky. The devil god reappeared and strode across the starry sky. Torrential devil chi tumbled and his hair fluttered. For the first time, one of his arms completely extended out of his waistcoat. His aura was like a heavenly dragon stretching out its claws. He fiercely clawed at Bai Changchun from afar. An incomparably terrifying pressure pressed down from all directions, as if even the invisible time was about to be sealed. With just a thought, Bai Changchun had a feeling that he was going to be squeezed to the point that he bled from all 7 apertures and exploded. It was not something that he could withstand with his cultivation. Let's see if your minor heaven's boundary is more powerful, or if my world-sealing devil is more powerful. The demonic god strode through the starry sky as if he was riding the wind and breaking through the waves, bringing along torrential demonic chi as he moved like a heavenly dragon. The 5 claws that he stretched out didn't retract as they charged towards Bai Changchun, who had stopped in his tracks, as if he wanted to decide the outcome of the battle with a single strike. The expressions of everyone in the Yuchen Palace changed drastically. They forgot to breathe, and even their hearts almost stopped beating. It's not difficult to break through. Watch as my great power of the heavens breaks through you. The immense pressure produced by the world-sealing devil was instantly dispelled. Bai Changchun, who was frozen in the void, suddenly fluttered in his green robes as he danced rapidly. His skinny figure was unyielding, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. His green robes were like a green lotus blooming in the starry sky. At the same time that the immense pressure was instantly dispelled, two pairs of skinny arms and the skinny figure flew rapidly. They retracted the remaining power of the world-sealing devil and used it to exert their strength. They once again used the great power of the heavens to the extreme against the devil god who was charging towards them. The devil god immediately sensed the terrifying strangling power that was charging towards him and quickly retracted his attack. He wrapped his waistcoat and spun in the air. With a wave of his arm, the torrential devil chi that was like a huge black demonic dragon charged forward. A loud buzzing sound rang out in the starry sky. The black demonic dragon formed by the devil chi was immediately ground into dust by the terrifying power, while the remaining power that was charging towards them was dispersed by the devil god's palm strike. In the next instant, the two of them clashed fiercely with their eyes. Two figures, one green and one black, charged at each other without any hesitation. They collided brazenly, and the rumbling sounds of their fierce battle rang out incessantly, shaking the stars. The two of them were incredibly fast. Their battle shadows were everywhere, and they could not be separated from each other. In a situation where they could not do anything to the other party despite their endless array of techniques, the two of them actually chose the most dangerous close-quarters combat. The crowd in front of the Yuchen Palace's yin-yang mirror was dumbfounded. All the gods knew that people who had reached their level of cultivation could be said to have boundless powers. They could decide the outcome of the battle with just a wave of their hands. It was rare to see them engage in close-quarters combat unless they were truly out of options. Most of the time, such situations would only occur between two people whose levels of cultivation were not too far apart, and they would only end up like this when they were at their wits' end. For someone like Bai Changchun, whose level of cultivation was clearly inferior to the devil god, it was inevitable that he would be at a disadvantage, be it in terms of the toughness of his physical body or his reaction speed. However, what surprised everyone was that Bai Changchun did not evade the devil god's attack head-on. It was extremely dangerous, and it was not a wise move. Everyone could not help but feel worried. However, the two of them were engaged in a fierce battle too quickly. The starry sky was filled with the shadows of their fierce battle. Under such circumstances, they could not tell who was stronger and who was weaker. Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue held each other's hands tightly. They were extremely nervous. Suddenly, there was a loud boom, and the two entangled figures rapidly separated. Bai Changchun was dressed in a green robe. His thin and stubborn figure squatted in the starry sky, and his eyes were burning with fighting spirit. He was like a piece of firewood that could be lit up easily, as if he had not fought to his heart's content. He did not seem to have suffered any injuries on his body. What shocked everyone so much that their eyeballs almost fell out was the devil god's appearance. When the two of them separated in the fierce battle, the devil god seemed to have suffered a heavy blow and was forcefully blown away. Large amounts of blood burst out of his mouth and nostrils at the same time. Then, he lowered his head and stood silently in the void, as if he was repenting. Under the steel-like tip of the pen, blood seeped out of his nostrils and flowed down the corners of his mouth. His clothes and hair were extremely messy. Silence. Both the battlefield and the Yuchen Palace fell into an extreme silence. The situation was obvious. The devil god was injured. The devil god had actually been injured in a close combat battle with Bai Changchun. The gods looked at each other speechlessly. Yu Qianqiu's tightened mouth finally cracked open, and he laughed foolishly. The devil god slowly raised his hand and wiped the blood from his mouth and nose. He looked at the dark red bloodstain on the back of his hand and slowly raised his head to look at Bai Changchun. His eyes were also filled with disbelief. In the previous exchange, his speed was clearly superior to his opponent's. Coupled with his own cultivation, victory should have been a sure thing. Who would have thought that when they actually fought, it would be completely different? Even he himself was baffled by the other party. No matter how fast he attacked and how powerful he was always one step behind. It was as if his opponent could always predict his next move one step ahead, and he was completely in a state of being beaten up. He didn't know how many punches and kicks he had suffered. Fortunately, he had quick reflexes. Every time the punches and kicks landed on his body, he was able to neutralize most of the force. However, he was still beaten until he was furious and sullen. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. When he tried to escape, his opponent ruthlessly kicked him in the chest. Just this kick alone injured him. Fortunately, his demonic arts were powerful and he could withstand it. If it were anyone else, they would have died long ago. Satisfying. How satisfying. It's been a long time since I've met a decent opponent. Again. The devil god suddenly let out a wild and unrestrained laugh. Their figures flashed, and they collided angrily again. The yin-yang mirrors' shadows entangled in a fierce battle, and the rumbling sounds did not stop. Hee hee. This guy really deserves a beating. Yu Qianzhou cackled. Among everyone present, he was probably the only one who knew why the devil god was at a disadvantage. However, just as he smiled, he could no longer smile. The two of them had separated from the fierce battle. The devil god stood in the starry sky with his arms crossed, sneering. The black waistcoat that never left his body had disappeared. In front of him, Bai Changchun's skinny body was tightly wrapped in a black cloth, and he was struggling and wriggling inside it. Everyone from the Yuchen palace was shocked. Clearly, the devil god had set up a trap by fighting in close combat despite knowing that he was at a disadvantage. Now, Bai Changchun had fallen into the trap and was trapped by the devil god's treasure. Bastard! Despicable! Shameless! Despicable! Yu Qianzhou was so anxious that he stomped his feet and cursed. At this moment, the black cloth that was wrapped around Bai Changchun suddenly expanded like a balloon. Everyone's eyes lit up again, anticipating Bai Changchun's divine might to dissolve it. The devil god, who was standing with his arms crossed, scoffed and said, "Stop struggling pointlessly. This waistcoat was a gift from Ming back then. I've always worn it and refined it repeatedly for countless years. I've already refined it into a pure devil domain that's isolated from everything in the world. It's not within the 5 elements. No matter how high your cultivation is, you can forget about escaping if you don't have your own Dao realm. Just stay in there and be influenced by my demonic energy. Become a devil and obey my orders as soon as possible." Hee hee. Everyone from the Yuchen palace looked terrible, especially the 4 ancient gods of light. Yu Qianzhou was so anxious that he was about to go crazy. Unfortunately, he could not be of any help. Suddenly, the devil god's unbridled laughter came to an abrupt stop. He said in disbelief, "What's going on?" Bai Changchun's sonorous chanting, which was like a tidal wave, could be heard clearly from the swollen black balloon. It spread into the endless starry sky. Disregard all life, disregard ghosts and gods, disregard karma. Close your eyes, cover your ears, wither your heart, nothing, everything is empty. Rebirth, Buddha. Chapter 1249. As the Sanskrit chants echoed, a bright white light suddenly bloomed from the black ball. Bai Changchun, dressed in a plain green robe, floated out of the white light with an indifferent expression. His expression was incomparably holy, as if he had seen all the vicissitudes of the world, yet he was untainted and had already attained Tao. There weren't any holes on the black balloon, nor were there any spatial rifts torn open. In short, Bai Changchun came out calmly just like that. There was an inexplicable sense of strangeness in his holiness and elegance. Did you instantly comprehend the realm of Tao? How is this possible? The god-fiend could not help but mutter to himself in a daze. His eyes almost popped out, and no one knew what he was thinking. When he saw the bright white light that carried Bai Changchun suddenly disappear, his eyes turned cold again, and he shouted, "No, you didn't attain Tao immediately. Is this the realm of false Tao? True is true, false is false. If it's false, then it's an illusion that can only confuse people's senses. Facing your real pure devil territory, how can I come out? Bai Changchun sighed with some emotion. Your pure devil territory is indeed powerful. At this critical moment, I could only borrow your Dao. Although I can't break your pure devil territory, it's not a problem to leave it. What? The God Fiend's eyes went blank again, and he cried out in surprise, borrow my Dao? You can borrow my Dao? Then why can't I borrow it? Bai Changchun asked back, and the God Fiend was instantly speechless. He had a head full of question marks. He could not answer this question. Yes. Why could he borrow it? Why couldn't he borrow it? This question took him a long time to think about. Seeing his confused expression, Bai Changchun explained again, the realm is like an orchard. There are fruit trees planted in the Dao garden, and they are full of fruits. I often wander outside the Dao garden, but I can't find the door to enter. Although I can't have the entire orchard to taste the Dao fruit, seeing the luxuriant branches of the tree extending out of the garden, I will be the owner of this garden sooner or later. Can't I pluck a Dao fruit to taste first? Since I can't pluck other people's things, why can't I pluck my own things? Bai Changchun also expressed his admiration for such a powerful opponent. He didn't hide any of the mysteries within. As for whether or not he could comprehend anything, that wasn't something he could control. However, even the gods in the Jade Chen Palace were able to hear these words. There were people of higher cultivation levels who were not stingy with their teachings. For people of their level of cultivation, such an opportunity was something that could only be chanced upon. They could not afford to miss it. If they were able to comprehend something, it would be an incredible thing. However, it was difficult for them to comprehend the mysteries within in a short period of time. Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue were far from reaching their level. They didn't even know where the garden was, not to mention plucking the fruits. Naturally, they were confused as they looked at each other, their eyes filled with doubt. Should they still fight? Could it be that reasoning could make the other party admit defeat? So that's how it is. The demon god nodded thoughtfully, then asked, then how can I see the Dao fruit growing out of the garden? The Dao garden is vast. You head straight for your target and persevere at the entrance, thinking about how to open the garden gate. If you don't walk around, how do you know if there are any Dao fruits growing out of the garden? Bai Changchun asked again, immediately causing the demon god to sink into deep thought. The gods of the Jade Chen Palace were also deep in thought. Yu Qianzhou's eyes darted around, then he let go of Wu Lixue's hand and quickly walked to ancient god Coiling Dragon's side. He rubbed his hands together, pointed at the supreme divine bow and the heaven and earth splitting arrow in his hands, and said in a low voice, Senior, this is a rare opportunity. Use this opportunity to quickly give these two divine weapons to my master. Ancient god Coiling Dragon looked at the weapons in his hands, then at the scene in the yin-yang mirror. He frowned and said, now, that's not a good idea. From the looks of it, your master might not necessarily be a match for the demon god. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes slightly. He really wanted to say, are you stupid, but on the surface, he said helplessly, this battle is so unpredictable. If we keep watching, I'm afraid I won't be able to stand the excitement. Besides, everyone wants my master to win. If we don't take this opportunity to give the divine weapons to him, I'm afraid that if something happens, we won't have the chance to give them to him even if we want to. He then put on a pleading expression. Hearing this, the four ancient gods of light also looked over. From the twinkle in their eyes, it was clear that they also agreed to do this, but they didn't dare to say it out loud. They were afraid that if the divine weapon still couldn't kill the demon god, then it would be terrible. The ancient phoenix god looked at Yu Qianzhou with disdain, as if she was looking down on his character. Ancient god Coiling Dragon hesitated for a long time. After being urged by Yu Qianzhou again, he finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. With a swish, he opened a crack in the void. A ball of light appeared in his palm and wrapped around the two divine weapons, then he threw them in. Everyone immediately looked at the yin-yang mirror. They saw that a crack in the void had also appeared beside Bai Changchun, and the ball of light wrapped around the divine weapons shot towards him. Bai Changchun glanced at it and roughly understood what was going on. Instantly, an expression of fury appeared on his face, and he shouted, "Scram!" With a wave of his sleeve, the ball of light wrapped around the divine weapons was directly sent back into the crack in the void. Given his character, he wasn't the kind of person who needed the help of others to win in a one-on-one battle. To him, this was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Similarly, there was another person who also felt that he had been greatly humiliated. Ancient God Coiling Dragon grabbed the divine weapons that had been sent back into the crack in the void. His expression was dark and gloomy, and he felt as if he had been trying to flatter someone but had failed. When he thought about how he, the sovereign of the dragon race, had been snubbed despite his good intentions, he wanted nothing more than to find a hole in the ground and bury himself alive, never to see anyone again. For the time being, he didn't have the ability to cause trouble for Bai Changchun. He immediately glared fiercely at the culprit. Yu Qianzhou immediately became embarrassed, and he guiltily avoided the other's gaze. He pointed at Bai Changchun in the yin-yang mirror and cursed in exasperation, "Stubborn and inflexible. Truly a stubborn old man. I can't be bothered with you anymore." With a wave of his hands, he walked back to Wu Lixue's side and grabbed her hand, completely ignoring the murderous gazes behind him. However, at this moment, the supreme divine bow and the heaven and earth splitting arrow in ancient God Coiling Dragon's hands suddenly broke free from his grasp and shot into the sky. They floated in the air and exploded with dazzling golden light. Two phantoms shot out from the two divine weapons and fused into one. A barefooted man with bronze skin and leopard skin clothes, with an ancient vine tied around his waist and a quiver on his back floated in the air. He looked like a hunter, and he floated in the air. His strong and sturdy arms spread out, and the supreme divine bow flashed as he slung it over his shoulder. The heaven and earth splitting arrow drew a golden arc as it was inserted into the quiver. His simple and honest face turned around, and he smiled at the crowd. There were specks of cloud pattern sparkling with starlight on his forehead. The gods cried out in surprise. Almost all of them were stunned on the spot, their faces filled with disbelief. Great God Yu Qianzhou also cried out involuntarily. Last time, he had only seen a phantom, but this time, he was a real person. Only Wu Lixue looked at Great God Yi with a blank expression. She didn't know where he came from, but he was able to make everyone's expressions change. Great God Yi's tall and sturdy body slowly landed on the ground. He looked around and nodded with a smile. You are still alive. You are back. The gods cried out in surprise again. Suddenly, Yu Qianzhou let go of Wu Lixue's hand and ran to Great God Yi. He pointed at himself excitedly and said, "It's me. It's me. Senior Yi, do you still recognize me?" "Yes." Great God Yi smiled and nodded, "You are Yu Qianzhou, we met last time." It seemed like he had a good memory. However, it was not his fault that his memory was bad. After sleeping for so long, he only saw one person when he woke up, and they even chatted for a while. It would be strange if he didn't remember. The gods were surprised. They didn't expect Yu Qianzhou to know Great God Yi. However, it was understandable. Judging from the situation just now, Great God Yi's soul had been residing in the two divine weapons. It was not surprising that Yu Qianzhou knew him. Yu Qianzhou's expression was one of honor. He cheerfully pointed at his nose as if he was showing off something. It was as if he wanted to tell everyone that he and Great God Yi were brothers. In the end, everyone looked at him with disdain. Wu Lixue couldn't help but laugh. In the eyes of a lover, everything about her man was pleasing to the eye. She didn't feel that Yu Qianzhou was flattering. Instead, she felt that he was cute. "I forgot myself. I forgot myself." Yu Qianzhou awkwardly cupped his hands and said, "Senior Yi, I was the one who found the supreme bow and the sky-splitting arrow. You once said that as long as I find these two items and merge your soul, you will do me a favor. Do you still remember? Great God E had this demeanor. He didn't go back on his word. He thought for a while and nodded with a smile, I remember. But I said that I would only help within my capabilities. Of course, of course. It must be within your capabilities. Yu Qianzhou decisively pointed at the yin-yang mirror floating outside the Yuchen palace. He pointed at the demon in the mirror and said, "It's that guy. Senior E, please shoot another arrow and kill the demon. This shouldn't be difficult for you, right?" Everyone was stunned. Great God E looked at the yin-yang mirror. The two in the mirror were still staring at each other silently. The demon seemed to be digesting Bai Changchun's words, and Bai Changchun didn't take the chance to attack. Great God E didn't pay much attention to the demon. Instead, his eyes were attracted by Bai Changchun. He said in shock, "It's Rui. He's revived?" After a long silence, he stared at the yin-yang mirror and asked without turning his head, "Coiling Dragon, Phoenix, what is going on?" Coiling Dragon and Phoenix walked behind him respectfully, as if they didn't want others to hear their conversation. They were explaining something to the Great God E through telepathy. So that's how it is. Great God E, who stood still for a while, nodded. He turned to Yu Qianzhou and smiled bitterly, "It's not a problem to help you. But once I'm awake, you want me to kill for you. That's too hard on me. Besides, this is the arrangement of Tao. I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I really can't help you with this." Chapter 1250. Yu Qianzhou couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "You're the Great God E. You can't go back on your words." The Great God E shook his head firmly and said, "I can't change anything that goes against the will of Tao, and I don't have the power to change it." With that, he didn't look at Yu Qianzhou anymore and looked at the yin-yang mirror. "Tao again. Who the hell is that guy?" Yu Qianzhou's face was full of resentment. The demon god woke up from his thoughts and raised his eyebrows slightly. Although he didn't see what happened in Yuchen Palace, he saw how Bai Changchun blocked the two divine weapons and that Bai Changchun didn't take the chance to sneak an attack. Now, a strange look flashed in his cold eyes as he looked at Bai Changchun. Suddenly, he flipped his palm and the inflated black balloon turned back into the black waistcoat and wrapped around his body. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for the lesson." It was rare for him to express his admiration, but then he shouted, "Again." Once again, a cyan silhouette and a dark silhouette clashed against each other in the starry void, rumbling and inseparable. "E, who do you think is stronger?" asked the Phoenix ancient god who stood beside the Great God E. The Great God E didn't answer. He stood there as steady as a mountain, but his eyes exploded with a strange light as he stared at the two figures fighting. Suddenly, the demon god shouted angrily, "Demon God Fist!" Boom! There was a loud explosion that shook space. The universe seemed like it was going to collapse. Even the people in Yuchen Palace could feel the strong tremors. A huge shadow of a fist appeared, directly blasting open a terrifying spatial crack in the vast starry sky. Its power was so great that it was simply indescribable. Countless stars let out mournful cries after the explosion. The huge shadow of the fist slowly disappeared. The demon god raised his fist and stood with his eyes closed. It seemed like he used all his strength in this punch. He floated silently in the starry sky. The clothes on his upper body had been torn apart, revealing chunks of solid muscles. Even the black waistcoat that had almost never left his body was gone. A few pieces of his green robe could be faintly seen floating in the air. Bai Changchun disappeared. The yin-yang mirror couldn't see him either. He didn't appear for a long time. What happened? Could it be, everyone from Yuchen Palace thought of the terrifying outcome? Could war god Rui have fallen to the demon god's demon god fist? Otherwise, Why couldn't the yin-yang mirror, which could see everything in yin and yang, see any trace of the sharp edge of the war god? Impossible. Yu Qianzhou's face turned pale with fright. He was dumbfounded and even fell to the ground. Wu Lixue was also stunned. The ancient god of light and the other three didn't look too good either. However, when they saw great god Yi standing as steady as a mountain, they were no longer afraid of the demon god settling old scores. Ancient god Coiling Dragon looked at great god Yi in disbelief and asked, "Yi, did Rui fall again?" The divine light in great god Yi's eyes dimmed. He looked at Mo Shen coldly and didn't say anything. Jade Chen Palace fell into silence after the initial shock. Mo Shen, who was attacking with all his might in space, slowly raised his head and retracted his fist. He tore off a few pieces of his clothes and threw them into the depths of the vast universe. He looked around coldly and tore open a crack in space. He stepped into it. In the blink of an eye, a crack appeared in Jade Chen Palace. Mo Shen walked out with his strong and muscular body. The crack in space disappeared behind him. He floated in the air and looked at everyone coldly. When he saw great god Yi, a demonic blood-red light flashed in his eyes. He stared at him and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Yi," great god Yi replied indifferently. "The #1 expert of the ancient times." "Great god Yi? You're still alive?" Mo Shen was slightly moved. Great god Yi nodded expressionlessly and said, "That's me." Mo Shen didn't argue with him. He stared at Coiling Dragon and Phoenix and said in a deep voice, "Coiling Dragon, Phoenix, I won. Let Dao come out and fulfill his promise." "Bastard! I'm going to kill you." All of a sudden, Yu Qianzhou let out a crazy roar. His pair of eyes had turned red, and he leaped up from the ground. With a buzzing sound, a strong samadhi fire burst out from his body. With a wave of his hand, 100 dark weapons appeared simultaneously. Tears fell from his eyes as he took the lead and led the 100 mystical soldiers to charge towards the fiend celestial with no regard for their lives. Wu Lixue cried out, "Yu Qianzhou," in despair. She wiped her tears and followed Yu Qianzhou. She wanted to live and die together with Yu Qianzhou. Ancient Phoenix widened her eyes. She finally understood why Yu Qianzhou dared to come and save Wu Lixue. She also understood why Wu Lixue gave up the chance to become a god and left with Yu Qianzhou. Not for anything else, but for the relationship of the gods that had been cold for a long time. In some people's eyes, gods were nothing. At the same time that everyone present was moved, they sighed inwardly. Although the two of them were sentimental, how could they be a match for the demon god with such little ability? They were clearly sending themselves to their deaths. Mo Shen stretched out his bare arm and clenched his claws. Great god Yi waved his arm at the same time. Two nebulae instantly wrapped around Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue. Bang! Mo Shen's claw was powerful. The 100 dark soldiers were blasted into dust on the spot. They couldn't be revived anymore. The two nebulae protected Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue. They were unharmed. They were forcefully dragged to Great God Yi's side. Great God Yi raised his hand behind him. Coiling Dragon and Phoenix reached out to hold Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue. Wu Lixue cried helplessly. Yu Qianzhou struggled with all his might. He pointed at Mo Shen and roared, "Bastard! Don't run if you have the guts. I want to fight you. Don't run." Tears flowed down their cheeks. They couldn't break free from Coiling Dragon and Phoenix's control. You don't have the intention to kill them. Great God Yi looked at Mo Shen and said calmly. He had detected Mo Shen's attack and avoided Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue. Their master is a respectable opponent. I won't kill them for their master's sake. Mo Shen snorted coldly. He shouted at Coiling Dragon and Phoenix again, "Let Dao come out and fulfill his promise." Just as he finished speaking, a majestic sigh resounded throughout the vast starry sky. It seemed to reverberate through every corner of the universe. An irresistible aura instantly surged forth, shaking everyone's mind. Even Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue, who were overly sorrowful, forgot to cry. Dao! The god fiend's face was also filled with shock as he quickly looked around. Great God Yi, ancient god coiling dragon, and ancient god phoenix stood devoutly. They seemed to be waiting for someone's arrival. Countless stars in the vast starry sky suddenly shone at the same time. Red, green, white, blue. It was a rare sight to see. But at this moment, all of them were blooming in the starry sky. They were colorful and it was a magnificent sight. Countless stars shot thin beams of light. The colorful beams of light gathered at Yuchen Palace at the same time. They dyed the entire Yuchen Palace colorful. The light illuminated the universe. It made people feel like they had fallen into a dreamy world. They didn't know where they were. The multicolored light that blossomed in the Yuchen Palace suddenly condensed on the Phoenix platform made of jade and stones. It merged into a ball of multicolored, squirming multicolored light, which vaguely took on the shape of a human. Yu Qianzhou and Wu Lixue forgot their sorrow. They looked up at the colorful light and were dumbfounded. Dao! The demon god pointed at the dazzling light and shouted, "Don't play tricks here. Our bet is over. I won. Quickly fulfill your promise and revive Dark." "How dare you!" Great God Yi shouted. He pointed at Emotion and shouted, "This is not a place for you to do whatever you want." "Great God Yi, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Emotion glared at him. Great God Yi teleported and disappeared. He appeared in front of Emotion. Boom! The two of them punched each other. Great God Yi didn't move. Emotion spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying out of Yuchen Palace. Emotion clearly wasn't Great God Yi's match. But Emotion gritted his teeth and charged back fearlessly. "Stop!" A distant, ancient voice rang out. The multicolored humanoid light on the Phoenix platform stretched out a finger, and immediately, a ring of light wrapped around the demon god, making it impossible for the demon god to break free. It forcibly locked the demon god in place. Great God Yi respectfully retreated in front of Dao. Emotion roared at the sky. His hair flew in the air. He couldn't hide his sorrow. Because today, he realized that his title as the #1 expert in the god realm was just a joke. He couldn't fight back at all with just a finger. Ancient God of Light and the other three looked at each other in shock. They finally saw Dao attack for the first time in countless years. They didn't expect it to be so terrifying. It was beyond their imagination. They were completely shocked. "Where does your sorrow come from? Where does your bitterness come from?" The colorful human figure asked, "Knight, do you really think you've won? You can fool others with a trick, but can you fool me?" With a wave of his hand, a crack immediately appeared in the starry sky. A black sphere floated in the crack, which was filled with thunderbolts. It was the black waistcoat that the demon god had used to trap Bai Changchun. The black ball shot out quickly and floated in the Yuchen Palace. The crack closed. Dao pointed at the black ball and it immediately turned back into the black waistcoat. It landed on the jade ground. Bai Changchun appeared in his torn green robe. He looked at everything in the Yuchen Palace with a twinkle in his eyes. "Master! You didn't die." Yu Qianzhou looked at Bai Changchun in shock. He slowly turned to look at Emotion, who was trapped. He seemed to have guessed something. No matter how strong one's cultivation is, he can't kill the other. Although the other's control technique is amazing, he can't kill the other. In such a difficult situation, to force me to show up, you actually work together to put on a show. Although the pure devil region isn't in the 5 elements, how can you hide from me? The colorful human figure asked, "Knight, can you still say you've won?" Everyone looked at each other with a sudden realization. It turned out that the two of them, who were evenly matched before, had suddenly decided on a winner. In fact, they had cooperated to put on a show to force Dao to show himself. Unfortunately, they had fooled everyone but not the one they really wanted to fool. Chapter 1251. Demonic God's eyes were red as he slowly raised his head, filled with grief and indignation. You said it yourself, neither of us can kill the other. That means, I didn't win, but I didn't lose either. Our bet is a draw. You can break your promise, but so can I. What right do you have to imprison me? Let me go. Are you thinking of dodging this calamity and cultivating diligently, waiting for the day when you make a comeback and defy the heavens to force me to submit? The humanoid glow sighed. Your obsession is too strong. Do you really think you haven't lost? If I really wanted to win, I wouldn't have sent you Rui, I would have sent Yi to defeat you. You tried just now. Are you a match for Yi? If I really wanted to win, there are countless people who are more talented than you in other time and space planes. I can summon experts who are thousands of times more powerful than you to subdue you. What do you have to win? At this, the gods were shocked, suddenly feeling like they were looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Demonic God clenched his teeth and trembled. Not to mention others, even Dao could defeat him with a finger. He had just experienced it. Bai Changchun, who had been silently observing Dao, asked with a solemn expression, "Who are you? Are you a human, a demon, or a ghost?" "I can be human, I can be a demon, I can be a ghost, I can be a speck of dust, I can be a weed by the roadside. I am all things in the world, and all things in the world can be me. Even all of you can be me, and I can be all of you." The humanoid glow sighed. What a joke. Bai Changchun snorted, no one can represent everything. The humanoid glow agreed, yes, indeed no one can represent everything. The cycle of the heavens, and only by living and multiplying can we maintain eternity. This is the same principle. Cultivators have delusions of standing at the peak of all living things and conquering everything. This goes against the natural order of the world. If the strong could conquer everything, I wouldn't need to make a bet with Yili to wake him up. At that time, I would be able to kill him on the spot. As he said that, he suddenly pointed at Yu Qianzhou. I don't need to summon him from another spacetime and let him destroy billions of cultivators to balance the yin and yang of the lower realm. What does it have to do with me? Yu Qianzhou muttered in a low voice. Suddenly, he realized something and his body trembled. He widened his eyes and looked at the human-shaped light. Yu Qianzhou was shocked. He had never told anyone about the secret of him transmigrating from another world, but the other party actually knew about it. Could it be that the reason why he transmigrated here after his death was really because of him? Everyone turned to look at Yu Qianzhou as if they were looking at a monster. Bai Changchun's expression was solemn as well. Wu Lixue was also frightened. She looked at Yu Qianzhou and asked cautiously, "Yu Qianzhou, is what he said true?" "I don't know." Yu Qianzhou shook his head blankly. Seeing his pitiful look, Wu Lixue couldn't bear it anymore. She grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, "It's true, I won't despise you." The trembling demon god suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood. He looked up to the sky and roared again, "I don't accept this." His voice reverberated like thunder. "I don't care who you are." Bai Changchun suddenly turned around. His tattered green robe fluttered in the wind. He said to Dao in a deep voice, "I haven't decided the winner between me and him. Your bet is not over yet. Let him go and let me decide the winner between me and him." When they were fighting with the demon god, both of them already knew that they wouldn't be able to decide the winner for the time being. Both of them appreciated each other. While they were fighting, the demon god secretly told Bai Changchun about the bet he made with Dao. If he won, Dao would help him resurrect Dark. If he lost, he would have to submit to Dao and obey the rules of Dao. Since they couldn't decide the winner between them, the demon god asked Bai Changchun to do him a favor. He wanted to see if Dao could really resurrect Dark. Then, they would find a chance to decide the winner between them in the future. Bai Changchun also wanted to see who this legendary Dao was. So, he played along with the demon god. Who knew that he couldn't hide it from the demon god? Are you trying to let him win? So what if he wins? He just wants to resurrect Dark, right? The humanoid glow said lightly, since both of you are so stubborn, why do you want to be entangled forever? Let's put an end to it today. I will do as he wishes. Hearing this, the demon god was shocked. He looked at Dao in disbelief. Dao pointed at the demon god, and the halo that bound him disappeared. The demon god immediately regained his freedom, but he didn't act rashly. Instead, he looked at Dao. On the Phoenix platform, the multicolored light squirmed for a moment, and then the beautiful light suddenly disappeared. A graceful woman wearing a black gauze dress quietly stood there. She stood there quietly, her shoulder-length hair fluttering in the wind. Her skin was as white as snow, and her face was so beautiful that it could topple cities. Her look surpassed the water god, and she was not the least bit inferior to the ancient Phoenix god. Everyone was speechless. They didn't expect that Dao would turn into a beautiful woman in the blink of an eye. The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth twitched. He found that this woman's appearance was 70% similar to Taishu Xian's. However, she was even more beautiful than Taishu Xian. Needless to say, this woman should be the legendary Dark. Dark, is it really you? The demon god exclaimed. With a mouth full of blood, he teleported to the Phoenix platform. He stretched out his trembling hands and wanted to hug her. However, he found that Dark was looking at him expressionlessly. The demon god seemed to have thought of something. Suddenly, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, he flashed back down. He pointed at Dark on the Phoenix platform and said, "You are not Dark. This is a smokescreen." "This is an illusion." Dark on the Phoenix platform slowly turned around. Everyone was stunned. They didn't see clearly what was going on. A beautiful woman had turned into a tall man in a yellow robe. His face was resolute, and his eyebrows were high. He looked into the distance with a heroic spirit. "Taishu Zheng!" the demon god exclaimed. He looked at the man on the Phoenix platform as if he was struck by lightning. He took a few steps back and pointed at him with a trembling hand. He shouted, "Dao, what are you trying to do?" Everyone looked at each other. Bai Changchun frowned deeply. Yu Qianzhou looked at the Phoenix platform in shock. This man was the ancestor of all demons, Taishu Zheng. Zheng. A woman's gentle voice was heard. Everyone's eyelids twitched. They realized that another woman had appeared behind the demon god. It was Dark from before. The demon god suddenly turned around and looked at Taishu Zheng on the platform. He then turned back to look at her. His eyes instantly widened. He cried out, "Dark, it's you. I finally brought you back to life." Dark didn't even look at him. There was only one person in her eyes. She flew towards the Phoenix platform lightly. Taishu Zheng smiled and stretched out his arms. He smiled handsomely and said, "I thought I would never see you again." The man and the woman hugged each other. Dark buried her head in his arms and sobbed, "You are still alive. You are still alive." After a while, she slowly raised her head and looked at Taishu Zheng with teary eyes. She said, "Don't leave me alone again, okay? I never thought of leaving you." Taishu Zheng let out a long sigh and held her in his arms. He looked around and asked curiously, "Where is this? Why are we here?" He fixed his eyes on the demon god. He frowned and said, "Knight, you are here too?" Everyone was dumbfounded. They didn't know what was going on. The stunned demon god suddenly pointed his finger and shouted angrily, "Dao, let go of her. Knight, what do you want? Tai Shu Jing stared at him with a stern gaze. Dark raised her head from his bosom and turned around to look at emotion. Her expression was somewhat complicated. After all, this man had once fought against the entire world for her. She clenched her teeth and said, Zheng, ignore him. He's a madman. Let go of her. The demon god clenched his fists and roared angrily. Sigh. A sigh was heard from above. Everyone looked up and saw that the human-shaped ray of light had appeared in the sky again. Everyone looked at the Phoenix platform again. The two people were still there. They were also looking at the sky in confusion. Knight, as you wished, I have brought Dark back to life. But would Ming really go with you? She needs to make a decision herself. I can't force you, so I can't force her either. So, I have brought Zheng back to life as well. You three have been entangled for so many years. Let's put an end to it today. The human-shaped ray of light said slowly. Dark and Zheng looked at each other, then looked at the sky and said, Did you bring us back to life? Who are you? Dark, come with me. The demon god stretched out his hand and said emotionally, I asked him to bring you back to life. You should come with me. Dark and Zheng obviously couldn't understand what had happened. However, Dark refused righteously, from the day you killed Zheng, our friendship has been severed. I don't want to pursue the past. I hope you will not pester us in the future. Impossible. The half-naked demon god waved his arms and pointed at Tai Shu Zheng. He said angrily, You better come with me. If I can kill him once, I can kill him again. Tai Shu Zheng's face was full of anger. Before he could say anything, Dark had already stood in front of him. She looked at the demon god and said, Then you better kill both of us. Otherwise, I won't live alone. The human-shaped ray of light in the sky interrupted, Knight, if you want to kill her, I won't stop you. No one will stop you. But you only have one chance. I won't help you bring her back to life again. You better think carefully before you act. Why? Why? I believe that no one in this world loves you more than I do. Ming, why do you treat me like this? Which part of me isn't as good as he is to you? Why? The demon god, who had awed all the gods, had a helpless expression on his face at this moment. He raised his head to face the endless stars and muttered to himself. His face was full of a bitter smile. He was smiling silently, but 2 lines of blood tears unknowingly flowed down from his eyes. Chapter 1252. This scene made all the gods sigh with emotion. This infamous devil god was not afraid of the heavens or the earth. He was not even afraid of the great god Yi and Dao, whose cultivation level was higher than his. But now, he was reduced to such a state by a woman. How could one not sigh? Bai Changchun frowned and did not say a word. People like him would not be tied down by such things. He thought that the devil god might not be able to overcome this obstacle. Otherwise, he would have proven his way long ago and become the founder of the demonic path. Yu Qianzhou secretly looked at the humanoid light in the sky and clicked his tongue in his heart. This monster was really evil. The other party wanted to resurrect one, but he had to give up a buy one get one free one and resurrect 2. It was clear that the other party couldn't take either of them away. How could the devil god endure this? Damn it, this is really worth learning. Zheng and Ming were also moved when they saw that the indomitable man was actually laughing while weeping blood. The anger on their faces also unconsciously disappeared, and the grievances between them seemed to have vanished in an instant. After remaining silent for a long time, the devil god turned around slowly, and he seemed as if he'd become a completely different person in the blink of an eye as he said with a ghastly tone, Ming, my obsession towards you has been severed from today onwards, and I've returned what I owed the 2 of you. Leave. But don't let me see you again, or I'll kill you. Although he said so, the tears of blood still flowed from his eyes. He was trying to control his tone. Ming and Tai Shuzheng looked at his back without saying anything for a long time. They couldn't help but think of the time when the three of them were together. Then, Tai Shuzheng sighed softly and held Ming's hand. When they were about to fly away, the humanoid light in the sky said, "The living live, the dead die, the yin and yang. The resurrection of the dead will disturb the yin and yang. Since you two are dead, you can continue your love in the next life." Zheng and Ming looked at him with a serious expression. They didn't know what he wanted to do. The humanoid light waved its hand and said, "Don't panic. You two have received the blessings of Blue Heart. You are destined to be together for 10 lifetimes. I will send you two to another world to continue your next life." The Fiend Celestial suddenly turned his head, only to see the men and women on the Phoenix platform, like a bunch of fireflies clustered together, gradually flying away, and also like pieces of glowing flower petals, spiraling up into the sky, quickly disappearing into the dark void, no longer leaving a trace. 10 lifetimes. The devil god laughed crazily. The bloody tears on his face made it hard to tell whether he was crying or laughing. With such a terrifying method, he could make people live and make people die. Everyone finally felt the irresistible and brilliant heaven's might, and they all felt their scalps go numb. The humanoid light said, "Rui, Yi, I want to enlighten you two to stand on the righteous and demonic paths. You will become the saints of this world. Are you two willing to submit to the great Tao?" The Yuchen palace fell silent. Everyone looked at the two people who had been named. The gods looked envious. This treatment was much better than what they, the people who had submitted to the great Tao, received. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. If he had the support of a saint master, he would have a good life in the future. Not interested. Bai Changchun broke the silence without any hesitation. He was wearing a tattered green robe and was about to leave. "Rui, do you still remember the past?" The humanoid light pointed its finger forward, and a dark light appeared out of nowhere, falling on Bai Changchun's head in a seemingly unhurried manner. Bai Changchun couldn't dodge it, and the dark light disappeared into Bai Changchun's head in a flash. Bai Changchun felt like he was struck by lightning. He held his head with both hands and seemed to be in great pain. He wanted to leave, but every step was very heavy. Suddenly, a muffled groan came from his chest. He opened his arms and the hairpin turned into dust. His long hair fluttered in the wind. "Master!" Yu Qianzhou jumped up in shock. Wu Lishue's face was also filled with fear. The demon god looked at the sky angrily and said, "What did you do to him?" The humanoid light replied, "I just reminded him of his past life." Bai Changchun slowly turned around and stood there proudly while his gaze swept past everyone like a bolt of lightning. The golden cloud stripe between his brows was a ghastly sight, and an imposing aura that was like a powerful army surged out from his body. It was extremely fierce and pierced the hearts of others. The gods gasped. Rui was the Rui they were familiar with. Almost at the same time, they had the same thought. The god of war had returned. Bai Changchun stared at Great God Yi for a long time. He looked up at the sky and shouted, "Dao! Rui, you have experienced the vicissitudes of 2 lives. Are you willing to follow the Tao?" The humanoid light said. "What is the great Tao, and what is the minor Tao? 100 flowers blooming and 100 schools of thought contending for supremacy is the true Tao. I have my own Tao, and I fight against the heavens for the Tao. Why should I obey you? Fight against the Tao." "Well said." The demon god praised. He walked forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Bai Changchun. Their long hair fluttered in the wind. They looked at the sky and didn't want to surrender. "Are you two really determined to fight against the Tao? You must know that the Tao is merciless. It can destroy you in an instant. It will be too late to regret." The humanoid light warned. Even though Bai Changchun knew that his opponent's terror was not something he could fight against, he still resolutely said, "It's still better than being a yes-man and a rotten tree." Yu Qianzhou, who was at the side, looked at Bai Changchun with a helpless gaze. He knew that things were going to be bad. He couldn't understand it. He clearly knew that Bai Changchun could kill him with a single thought. Any resistance would be futile. Could it be that he couldn't just give in? Was there a need to be so stubborn? Wasn't it better to be a saint? The humanoid light sighed, "You two are really stubborn fools. You don't know the limit of the Tao. That's why you talk like this. Rui, no matter how strong you were in your previous life, you are just a poor scholar in this life. If it wasn't for the Tao, you would have been a dead soul under the broken soul cliff. If it wasn't for me giving you the Tao, you would have been immortal for 100 years. The Tao you walk is paved by me. Don't you think it's a joke to say that you are fighting against the Tao?" As soon as these words came out, Bai Changchun's expression changed greatly. He had finally been poked in his weak spot. He had always thought highly of himself and felt that he had always been walking his own path, but he never thought that the source of his pride was actually bestowed by someone else. How could he endure this? "If it is true, I would rather not have this Tao. I will give it back to you," Bai Changchun said. "With your current vision, calm down and think about the situation. You should know that everything is true." The humanoid light said, "The Tao is already under your feet. Why do you still want it? If you don't obey, do you think you can go back?" Bai Changchun thought about the past. There were too many coincidences. It was already incredible that he didn't die after jumping from such a high cliff. And then, his face gradually turned pale. After a long silence, his expression returned to normal. He said without fear, "Of course I can. Everything is back to where it started. Naturally, I will go back." Gently, Bai Changchun spread his arms. Thousands of golden arcs of light gushed out from under his feet, spiraling rapidly under his feet. Like a grinder that could crush everything, from the bottom to the top, his body was turned into dust and blood mist. The gods were in an uproar. The demon god was moved. No one thought that Bai Changchun would use his life to repay the Tao without hesitation. "No!" Yu Qianzhou cried out in alarm, and his eyes almost split apart as he pounced over with the intention of stopping them. Wuxia, on the other hand, was stunned by this scene. "Go back!" Bai Changchun waved his arm. A huge force that Yu Qianzhou couldn't resist bounced him back. Under the stars, the golden arcs stirred Bai Changchun's hair. He stared at Yu Qianzhou and said, "What is there to mourn about life? What is there to mourn about death? Asking me to live because of someone else's face is worse than death. I will never surrender. How can I not finish what I started? If I can exchange my true self with death, I will not regret it." His arms suddenly shook. Half of his body was quickly wrapped by countless golden arcs. In the end, the golden arcs became smaller and smaller. Gradually, they disappeared without a trace. There was no sadness, no tears, and no pain. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He killed himself in the vast starry sky. He didn't leave behind a piece of humiliating body. He only left an unforgettable figure in the green robe in everyone's mind. The gods were silent. "Old man, you are so stubborn. Why did you do this?" Yu Qianzhou smiled sadly. Bai Changchun was determined to do this for his dignity. He couldn't do anything about it. However, the skinny figure in the green robe with his hands behind his back and looking up at the stars lingered in his mind. The humanoid glow was silent for a while. After a long time, it spoke again, "Yi. I sent the blue crystal to the celestial realm to help you. But you were greedy and used too much of the blue sea essence. Do you know who pulled you back when your soul was about to dissipate? Don't say any more." The demon god raised his hand to stop him. He shook his head and laughed at himself. He vaguely remembered that when he used too much of the blue sea essence, his 3 souls and 7 spirits were about to collapse. But he heard someone shouting, "Come back," in the dark. He gradually woke up. Now that he was reminded by the demon god, he thought about it carefully. Wasn't the voice of the Tao? Then, are you willing to submit to the Tao? The humanoid glow's tone was quite gratified. It thought it had finally changed him. Who knew? Submit? The demon god suddenly laughed maniacally. He looked around at everyone with disdain. I'm on par with him. Do you think I'll lose to him in this stage? If he can pay me back, can't I? If I don't go crazy, I won't become a demon. It's just death. It's just a life. Take it. It suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a large ball of demonic qi. It reached out its claws and grabbed the wailing Qingyang, who was neither human nor ghost, and instantly crushed him into ashes. The rolling demonic qi turned into countless vengeful ghosts that devoured the demon god. Dense crunching sounds could be heard, making everyone's scalps go numb. Soon, the countless vengeful ghosts scattered. They lost control and wandered around the Yuchen palace. The demon god was still nowhere to be seen. Only a bloody mist was gradually dissipating. Chapter 1253. The demon god died just like that. In the past, the gods who wanted nothing more than to grind his bones and scatter his ashes behind his back didn't feel the slightest bit of joy this time. Only the ancient god of light was filled with hatred. In fact, he didn't care about his grandson Qin Yang's life or death at all. The key was a matter of face. He didn't expect that the demon god would drag his grandson Qin Yang out to mess with him before he died. He felt like he had been slapped in the face in front of everyone. He didn't even have the chance to take revenge. The demon god had already committed suicide. At this time, Wuxia was already crying. She covered her mouth and tried her best not to make a sound. Yu Qianzhou hugged her in his arms and coldly glanced at the gods. He patted the girl's back and said, "Let's go." Unexpectedly, the humanoid glow in the sky stopped him. "No hurry. There's still you. Could it be that you don't want to let go of such a small character like me?" Yu Qianzhou looked up at the sky. "Yu Qianzhou, your 5 elements grand method is still lacking one element to reach perfection. I want to enlighten you to achieve the 5 elements casting body of myriad transformations and make you the great Punisher sage. Are you willing to obey the great Tao?" The humanoid glow asked faintly. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the ancient god of light and the others changed. A hint of resentment flashed in their eyes. They couldn't understand. Who did this Yu Qianzhou think he was? How could he be treated better than them? Wuxia immediately looked up at Yu Qianzhou with tears streaming down her face. Yu Qianzhou patted her head and looked up at the sky with a calm expression. "Such a good thing, it's hard for me not to be tempted. But my master was forced to death by just a few words from you. If I turn around and accept your benefits, my conscience won't be able to live with it. If I really accept your so-called great Punisher sage, I'm afraid people will always point at my back and call me a spineless coward. How can a great Punisher sage with no prestige carry out punishment? Wouldn't that ruin your mission? You'd better choose someone else." Although his heart was also filled with unwillingness, in a situation where he could not reverse the situation, he rejected the other party as well. However, he was far more tactful than Bai Changchun. He would not commit suicide with a strong will. Since there was no other way, even if it was for the people around him, he would rather live a bad life than die a good death. Perhaps there would be a chance for revenge. This was the master and disciple duo, 2 different people facing life with 2 different attitudes. The gods looked at each other in dismay. They realized what was going on today. It was one thing for those 2 lunatics to not want the benefits, but even this guy who couldn't be seen in public was acting all high and mighty. Great benefits were unthinkable to those who wanted them, but for those who did not, the Tao was rewarding them one by one. The Great Tao encompasses everything in the universe, but it doesn't include the human heart. Is this what they mean by having a heart that's higher than the heavens? The humanoid glow sighed and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you have to think carefully. If you don't listen to the Tao, I will take back the star bead, and you will lose the source of the 5 elements. The 5 elements' great technique that you have painstakingly cultivated for many years will also be lost. You are a person who does not get up early without benefits. Are you really willing to give up all of this?" Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He was really reluctant, but he still braced himself and said, "Tao, you are insulting my character. The phrase, 'do not get up early without benefits' has absolutely nothing to do with me. I have always been an upright person." "Then let me ask you again. Are you going to listen to the Tao?" The humanoid glow seemed to have found his weakness. "You won't take my life when you get the star bead back, will you?" Yu Qianqiu finally asked what he was most worried about. He could give up the star bead, but he could not give up his life. "I know your answer." The humanoid glow sighed again. It sounded defeated no matter how he listened to it. It pointed down, and a dazzling golden bead instantly emerged from Yu Qianqiu's body. It shot into the sky and fused into Tao's body. Yu Qianqiu was alarmed. He quickly used his divine sense to contact Utopia and realized that the golden bead in his body had disappeared. He suddenly raised his head and shouted, "There's still someone in the star bead. Quickly release him." Yu Qianqiu, a familiar call suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianqiu turned around and realized that the hundreds of survivors in Utopia were all standing behind him. All of them were looking around in surprise. Furong and the other women came over and asked where they were. They had no idea why they had suddenly come here. These people did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, they had turned Yuchen Palace into a bustling market. At that moment, the humanoid glow pointed again. There was a flash of black light in the Jade Star Palace, and Taishu Xian appeared in front of everyone. He also looked around in confusion. He didn't know why he had suddenly come here from the celestial boundary. The huge yin-yang mirror floating outside Yuchen Palace rapidly shrank and floated quietly on the humanoid glow's palm. Tao, who was holding the yin-yang mirror, shouted with a reprimanding tone for the first time, "Taishu Xian. You're the yin-yang mirror's yin-I reincarnation. You have an innate ability. I wanted you to control the netherworld, but you've been peeking into the heavenly secrets for your own selfish reasons. Cut off your mortal thoughts and return to your position." A black light immediately shot out from the yin-yang mirror and shrouded Taishu Xian in it. Before Taishu Xian could figure out what was going on, he had already turned into a spot of white light while screaming and was absorbed into the yin-yang mirror. Following that, a jade archive flew out from Tao's body and shot downwards along with the yin-yang mirror. The yin-yang mirror fell into the hands of the ancient god Coiling Dragon, while the jade archive fell into the hands of the ancient god Phoenix. The two ancient gods, along with the great god Yi, bowed to the humanoid glow in the sky and said, "As you command." Tao did not say anything else. He abruptly turned into a ray of light in the starry sky and disappeared without a trace. Suddenly coming to this strange place and seeing such unbelievable things, the people from Utopia who were chattering away were so shocked that they did not dare to make a sound. Ancient god Phoenix held the long jade archive in her hand and slowly walked to the bottom of the Phoenix stage in her gorgeous dress. She turned to face the crowd and laughed in a pleasant voice. "Tao's decree. Anyone who survives the calamity in the star bead will be ranked on the stars ranking and immediately be conferred the title of God. Those whose names are called, please ascend the Phoenix stage to be conferred the title of God." Her smooth finger pointed at the jade stage behind her. Ancient god Coiling Dragon also walked to the bottom of the Phoenix stage and looked at the crowd solemnly. The Utopia crowd looked at each other, still not understanding what was going on. The ancient god of light and the other three were astonished. It was their first time seeing more than 100 people being conferred the title of god in one go. Ancient god Phoenix chuckled and said, Ko Shuahua, Mount Jade Meng, mountain god. Ko Shuahua walked out somewhat uneasily. Ancient god Coiling Dragon raised his hand and signaled for her to ascend the Phoenix stage. She turned to look at Yu Qianzhou. Seeing that he did not say anything, she could only nervously ascend the Phoenix stage. As soon as she stood in place, ancient god Phoenix pointed the jade archive in his hand toward the sky. A gorgeous rainbow shot down from the starry sky and instantly entered Ko Shuahua's body. Ko Shuahua's eyes suddenly became clear, as if she had suddenly understood something. The nervousness on her face had disappeared, and her cultivation level instantly skyrocketed to the early stage of small god. Once you ascend to the position, you will sense your own mountain guarding artifact and search for it. Ancient god Coiling Dragon reminded her. With a wave of his hand, he tore open a spatial rift and shot out a ball of light to wrap around her, sending her to the position. Murong Xian, Mount Spirit Beauty, mountain god. Mei Yinhong, Mount Flowing Cloud, mountain god. Seeing the three of them being conferred the title of god, Yu Qianzhou sighed softly. The three of them were originally his friends from supporting Immortal Island. Later on, he had forcefully abducted them and brought them to Utopia. At the same time, there were also Gu Qingyun and Xiao Wanqing. However, one of them had died in battle, and the others' whereabouts were unknown. Although their cultivation prospects after being conferred the title of god were limited, it was not necessarily a bad thing for the three of them. Otherwise, with their cultivation and talent, they would never be able to reach the god realm in their entire lives. This way, the three of them could be accounted for. At the very least, it was better than if they had continued to stay on supporting Immortal Island. Ancient god Phoenix named and conferred the titles one by one, and all of them were minor gods of the lowest level. As ancient god Coiling Dragon sent the people off one by one, it did not take long for more than 100 people to leave. As for the remaining people, they finally understood what was going on. It turned out that an enormous benefit had landed on them. After their names were called, practically no one cared about Yu Qianzhou's feelings or look at his expression. Each and every one of them impatiently ascended the Phoenix stage to pursue their own futures. Wu Sihai, mountain god of Divine Dragon Mountain. Wu Sihai, who had been named, quickly ascended the Phoenix stage in high spirits. He did not know what this title meant at all. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and was speechless. He thought to himself, this Tao is really giving me face. He knows that they are my relatives. He could see that the closer one was to him, the better the title would be. Shen Yu, river god of the Netherworld River. Looking at Shen Yu, who disappeared from the Phoenix stage, Yu Qianzhou could not help but laugh. He did not expect that this fellow, who had been chased everywhere by the water tribe of the Netherworld River, would now be in charge of the billions of living beings in the entire Netherworld River. The singing ancient god Phoenix suddenly raised his voice and said, Yu Ji, Netherworld Master God, in charge of the Netherworld. As soon as these words came out, all the gods were shocked. Even they did not have the qualifications to rule over a world. They sized up Yu Ji seriously and realized that she was actually a ghost cultivator who had not even reached the immortal class. They couldn't help but look at each other. Even Yu Qianzhou was stunned in place. He did not know how this Tao arranged it. Yu Ji was also stunned in place. She never dreamed that she would one day become the ruler of the Netherworld. She walked towards the Phoenix stage in a daze, feeling as though she was dreaming. When she reached the bottom of the Phoenix stage, Coiled Dragon suddenly extended his hand and stopped her. He handed over the yin-yang mirror and said, originally, the person in charge of the Netherworld was Taishu Xian. However, Taishu Xian had seriously violated the heavenly Tao and lost the qualifications to wield the godly authority. You are the only Netherworld cultivator who made it to the stars ranking. Therefore, the right to wield the netherworld fell on you. Heaven has given you a great responsibility. After you take over the netherworld, you must use the yin-yang mirror to rebuild the reincarnation order of all living beings. You must not slack off, or you will be consigned to eternal damnation. Yes. I will obey the Tao decree. Yu Ji received the yin-yang mirror with reverence. Before she ascended the phoenix stage, she suddenly thought of something. She turned around and stared at Yu Qianqiu for a moment. She slowly bowed to Yu Qianqiu. Without him, she would not be here today. From the day they met, the past was still vivid in her mind. She had no way to repay his kindness. She could only bow to express her sincerity and hope to repay him if fate allowed it. In the starry sky, an incomparably huge rainbow light entered her body. Chapter 1254. Allure Temptress, Spiritual Goddess. The Allure Temptress slowly walked towards the phoenix stage. The gazes of the other women fell on her. They were all somewhat curious as to what god they would be conferred next. Ze, Goddess of Destiny. The ancient phoenix god immediately called out Ze's name and put away the jade archive in her hand. From the looks of it, she wasn't going to be conferred any more gods. The Allure Temptress and Ze, who were walking in front, stopped at the same time. They turned their heads to look at the people who were clustered together with Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared at the ancient phoenix god. His gaze flickered. The ancient phoenix god knew that they had doubts in their hearts. She smiled faintly and said, Yu Qianqiu, this is the decree of Tao. Tao says that you have rejected the conferment of Great Punisher Sage. These women who are entangled with your carnal desires are probably unwilling to accept the conferment. Will send you back to the world you came from. I reckon that you won't be able to bear to part with them, so he wants you to bring them along with you. This will completely sever the grudges between you and this world. What? Yu Qianqiu cried out involuntarily. His face was filled with excitement. He never thought that there would really come a day when he could go back. The ancient light god and the others looked at each other in dismay. The Allure Temptress and Ze's faces instantly paled. Only now did the two of them realize that it was actually very simple to distinguish between men and women. Whether they had slept on the same bed or not was an important criterion. The two of them were outsiders who were excluded from that bed. The women were still baffled. They stared blankly at Yu Qianqiu, trying to find an answer from his face. The ancient phoenix god's beautiful eyes swept over the women. She smiled and said, of course, if they are unwilling to go with you, or if you are unwilling to take them with you, they can still obey the conferment. However, you are not willing to submit to the great Tao, so you must leave this place. Go back to where you came from. This world can no longer withstand your torment. The women looked at Yu Qianqiu nervously. Yu Qianqiu also looked at them nervously. He said with a trembling voice, I don't belong to this world. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to go home. I won't force you. Are you willing to go with me? Wu Lixue, Furong, Chu Ping'er, and Yan Yu all smiled and nodded heavily. Bai Suzhen was the only one who stood there quietly. Yu Qianqiu did not even dare to breathe as he looked at her. However, to his disappointment, Bai Suzhen silently walked out from their ranks and bowed to the ancient phoenix god. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. Ah. Wu Lixue and the others cried out in alarm, Big Sister Bai, what's wrong? Why? Yu Qianqiu asked with a distressed expression. Bai Suzhen looked at him calmly and said with a tranquil expression, I cultivate the myriad demons' heart sutra and understand the hearts of myriad demons. They need my existence more than you, and my clansmen. I have to do my duty. Is that so? Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself in a daze, after returning from the Blue Sea death trap, I realized that something was wrong with you. I shouldn't have let you touch that damned Blue Sea essence, The ancient phoenix god smiled and nodded as if the development of the situation was within her expectations. She immediately shouted, "By Suzhen, demon god!" The ancient light god and the others were in an uproar. Others might not know, but they knew that goddess Nuwa was the demon god back then. Who would have thought that this demoness would take over goddess Nuwa's divine position? Bai Suzhen clasped her hands around her abdomen and slowly walked towards the phoenix stage. She brushed past the astonished allure beauty and purple dress and ascended the stage. In the starry sky, an endless stream of rainbow light rushed over like a long river. It took a long time for Bai Suzhen to completely absorb it into her body. Standing on the phoenix stage, Bai Suzhen suddenly became holy and aloof. Her cold eyes were once again filled with emotion. She silently looked at Yu Qianzhou for a long time. There was no need for the ancient god coiling dragon to send her off. She had already flown to the depths of the vast starry sky alone. Are the two of you still not going up the stage to receive your bestowment? Do you want to give up this opportunity to become a god? You must know that this opportunity cannot be missed. The ancient god coiling dragon stared at the allure beauty and purple dress and shouted. The two of them did not reply. They only stared at Yu Qianzhou, their eyes filled with despair and expectation. Seeing that the two of them were unwilling to leave after so long, the defeated Yu Qianzhou understood their intentions. They were just waiting for him to say the word. A smile appeared on Yu Qianzhou's face. Although he was a failure as a person, at least there were people who were willing to follow him and support him no matter what. He walked out from the group of women with large strides. Ze, who had yet to fully recover, looked at Yu Qianzhou with a sickly face and a pitiful look in her eyes. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianzhou walked over and knocked Ze on the head. He then angrily pulled Ze's ear and scolded her, "Where do you think you're going? Your parents are no longer here, so you should come with me. I have the responsibility and obligation to take care of you. You don't even know a fart, and you want to learn how to become a god? Go back." It was rare that Ze did not jump up and fight back. Her eyes showed that she had found her backbone. She obediently replied with an "oh" and ran back to the women's side. Yu Qianzhou and the temptress stood face to face. The former smiled and stretched out his hand. His meaning was obvious. "Come with me." The temptress's eyes were filled with tears. She slightly shook her head and said, "I need a reason." Yu Qianzhou grabbed her arm and pulled her over. He hugged her in front of everyone and pressed his lips on her red and alluring lips. The gods were speechless and looked at each other. These two were too outrageous. They actually did such a thing in front of everyone. On the other hand, Wuxia and the other women's faces were filled with envy. Ze, who had just obediently returned, was unhappy. She realized that they were all human, but the treatment they received was so different. Thus, she pouted so much that an oil bottle could be hung on it. The enchantress of 100 charm allowed him to ravage her lips, but in her slightly closed eyes, tears flowed unceasingly. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and pushed him away. She panted and bit her lips. "Are you not afraid now? You'd better think clearly. I don't want you to regret it later." Yu Qianzhou showed a look of, "I'm a hooligan and I'm not afraid of anyone," and said disapprovingly, "There's nothing to be afraid of. I was thin-skinned before, but now? There are at least 1 billion people who have scolded me, and I've long been trained to be thick-skinned and black-hearted. Right now, I only know that I like you, and it's enough that you don't want to go with me. Even if I have to rob you, I will take you away." The temptress couldn't hold back her tears again. Her shoulders trembled, and she cried in a mess. The slap from Nongzhu was still fresh in her mind. Later on, when anyone looked at her in a slightly inappropriate way, she would feel inferior and bear great pressure. However, she stubbornly believed that she was not in the wrong. Why couldn't she fight for the one she liked? Thus, she clenched her teeth and persevered. Now, she finally saw the light. All the grievances in the past were worth it. This strong woman could no longer control her emotions. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly. He didn't comfort her and let her vent. He hugged her in his arms and turned to Great God Yi. How do we go back? Great God Yi smiled faintly. He took down the supreme godly bow from his shoulder and pulled out the sky-splitting arrow from his quiver. He slowly floated to the starry sky and turned around in the void. In an instant, he turned into a 100-meter-tall giant, holding a huge godly bow and arrow. After putting the arrow on the bowstring, Great God Yi looked at the people below and shouted, "Come to my godly arrow." Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Then, he realized what was going on. He waved at the women and said, "My wives, come home with me." Holding the temptress' hand, he flew up into the sky and landed in one of the 6 grooves of the godly arrow. Zi, who was below, was a little shy. She whispered, "Who are your wives?" Seeing that her sisters had all flown away, she hurriedly chased after them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all of them sat in the huge groove of the godly arrow. Yu Qianzhou took the lead. The godlike Great God Yi's eyes were like lightning. He looked into the depths of the starry sky. His strong arm that was holding the bow and arrow suddenly exerted force and pulled the bowstring to its fullest. Instantly, the starry sky rumbled. Countless stars trembled and shone. They all shot out beautiful light beams and gathered on the huge sky-splitting arrow. A layer of faint light enveloped the entire godly arrow like a light shield, protecting Yu Qianzhou and the others within it. The 6-edged arrow slowly aimed at a certain place in the starry sky. Suddenly, Great God Yi's voice shook the starry sky, supreme godly bow, sky-splitting earth, arrow shattering the void. Immediately, a human figure separated from his body and attached itself to the divine arrow. He loosened the arrow, and countless stars trembled. Xiao. The divine arrow was like a golden shooting star, and its speed was unbelievably fast. As soon as the gods saw the divine arrow shoot out, it disappeared from their line of sight. A golden light disappeared into the distant starry sky. Great God Yi had disappeared. The supreme godly bow fell from the sky. The ancient phoenix god stretched out her hand and grabbed it. Bai Suzhen, who was dressed in white, was standing on a high cliff of a desolate planet. She was standing alone in the cold wind. Her dress fluttered in the wind. She silently watched the golden light disappear. She stood there for a long time. Crystal clear tears trickled down her smooth cheeks. Yu Qianzhou and the others, who were sitting on the divine arrow, had expressions of infatuation on their faces. The group of women were even more shocked. They had never seen such a beautiful scene in their entire lives. It was vast, profound, mysterious, and endless. Countless brilliant galaxies instantly disappeared around him. It was a spectacular view of the beauty of the entire universe in an instant. This boundless beauty was indescribable. The speed of the godly arrow was getting faster and faster. Gradually, they could not see the surrounding scenery clearly. The stars flew by. It was as if they were passing through a colorful world of flowing light. It made them feel dizzy. The speed was so fast that it almost suffocated them. Suddenly, a purple lightning shot out from the godly arrow. With a bang, it broke through the void in front of them. Everyone's body shook. Suddenly, the scene in front of them became clear. They saw that the purple lightning struck the ground and struck down a figure on the ground. The women covered their mouths and cried out. Yu Qianzhou's gaze swept below. He was stunned and speechless. It was a wilderness below. There were a few parked cars. There were also fully armed policemen. The person who was struck by the purple lightning seemed to be a criminal who was about to be executed. He fell to the ground with black smoke rising from his body. It immediately attracted a group of people. When the crowd dispersed, a policeman raised his gun to the heart of the criminal. Bang! A gunshot rang out. Chapter 1255. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. I closed my eyes and pretended to take a nap on the passenger seat. I could still recall the scene I saw when I first returned to this world. It was the scene where the death convict was struck by lightning. That scene was so familiar that I couldn't believe it. Later, I confirmed that the death convict was me in my previous life. Guo Jianjun. It was because of my return from another world that my other self was struck by lightning. The two of us were the same person. Of course, we couldn't live in the same world at the same time. The sound of the bustling city entered my ears. I opened my eyes and looked at the traffic outside the window. The sky was getting dark, and the neon lights were rising. The city was bustling with noise. Yi Zi, do you like this world? I mumbled as I looked out the window. Yi Zi was the enchantress of 100 charms. After I came to this world, I had been calling her that intimately. She liked it too. In fact, she had been with me for the past few years. The other girls were dazzled by this colorful world and found their own interests. Yi Zi was wearing a pair of black-framed sunglasses. Her hair was tied behind her ears, which made her look gentle and charming. She was wearing a set of casual clothes, but it couldn't hide her impressive figure. She held the steering wheel and glanced at me. She smiled faintly. I like places where you are. Soon, the car arrived at the suburbs and entered a leisure villa. Yi Zi parked the car. I got out and lit a cigarette. Then, a familiar car stopped in front of us. Chu Ping'er, who was wearing a black business suit, got out of the car. She looked smart and capable. Her secretary followed and reminded her, "Boss Chu, the flight to France is in 5 hours." "Got it. You go and prepare first. Come pick me up in 3 hours, Chu Ping'er said. Then, the driver left with the secretary. Seeing that there was no one around, Chu Ping'er smiled and hugged me. Then, she kissed me. Of course, I didn't hesitate to take advantage of her. This girl was now the boss of a company. She was so busy that we didn't have many chances to be intimate. After fooling around for a while, the three of them went to the peak of the villa together. There was a fairy tale-like wooden house built on the top of the mountain. From there, they could enjoy the beautiful scenery of the entire villa. This villa was originally Chu Ping'er's property, and we had agreed that no matter how busy we were, we would have at least one gathering every month. The three of them were sitting around a table at the top of the mountain, drinking. Lights shone from the bottom of the mountain, and the intense roar of an engine could be heard. A motorcycle racer elegantly turned into the villa. Chu Ping'er laughed and said, "Ze is here." Soon, Purple Dress, who hadn't even changed out of her racing uniform, ran up to us. She grabbed the three of us and kissed us fiercely. After squeezing herself in between us, she started talking excitedly about how she had won the championship. I was a little speechless. This girl was still as crazy as ever. She actually fell in love with racing. I've seen her compete. Her technique isn't that great, but she's a cultivator. Others might not be able to see through her cheating, but I can see it at a glance. The people who competed with her must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. I don't know how she got the championship this time. That's right. Not long after that, Yanyu and Hibiscus arrived. Yanyu had brought us gifts. They were clothes that she had personally designed for us. As soon as Yanyu had come to this world, she had been deeply impressed by the clothes of this world. She was talented in this area. After a lot of hard work, she had become a famous international fashion designer. However, I was jealous and often warned her not to get too close to male models who were more handsome than me. If they provoked me, I would kill them all. Even the police wouldn't help. Yanyu couldn't stop giggling. Perhaps it was because Hibiscus had grown up on Fuxian Island, but she had a strong desire for knowledge. She had sunk into the sea of knowledge and couldn't pull herself out. Now, she was learning the languages of several countries. It was also in line with her quiet personality. I had always supported her. Now, it seemed that she couldn't hide her scholarly aura. As the saying went, 3 women were enough to make a play. If there were more than 3 women, it wasn't hard to imagine that they had started to chat. I scanned the room and found that one was missing. Wuxia hadn't arrived yet. This girl was obsessed with photography. Did she forget the time of the party? As for the issue of safety, I wasn't worried at all. I had scouted the entire Earth and confirmed that apart from me, no one was a match for these women. While I was frowning, I faintly heard the sound of something flying through the air. I snorted and said, "Why are you sneaking around?" The women stopped chatting and looked back. They saw Wuxia emerge from the back of the house with a smile. She was wearing clothes with pockets everywhere, and she even had a camera on her shoulder. She stuck out her tongue awkwardly at everyone. "How many times have I told you? Since you're living in this world, you have to blend in with it. Don't do things like flying in the sky or burrowing into the ground. If someone finds out, the world will be in chaos." I hadn't finished talking when Wuxia stormed over and pressed my head against her boobs. I couldn't say anything else. This was her trump card against me. She hugged my head and apologized repeatedly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was taking photos in India and I missed my flight. I had to fly here directly. I promise this will be the last time. I won't do it again." The women burst out laughing. Chu Ping left and asked the chef to serve the dishes. The others pulled Wuxia into their circle. Wuxia immediately showed them the photos she had taken. She also told them where she had taken them. The dinner was sumptuous. The women chatted happily and ignored my existence. I was annoyed, so I smoked and drank alone. After a few hours, Chu Ping, her secretary, came to pick her up. She apologized and told them that she was busy at the company. Before she left, she winked at me and sent me a message. "I can't accompany you tonight. When I come back, I'll make it up to you." We left the party and drove back to the place I was staying. It was a villa in the middle of the mountain, far away from the city. On the way back, Ze drove her motorcycle to show off her driving skills. She shuttled back and forth between our cars. I sneered as I looked at her, but on the motorcycle. Tonight, she would be the main target of my attack. Actually, I had more than one place to stay. When I first saw the ancient forest in the celestial world, I wanted to live in a place like that one day. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a place like the ancient forest on Earth. That was why I built a treehouse in the Amazon rainforest. I even built an ice palace in the Himalayas. The women in the villa had their own rooms. However, women's gossipy nature didn't allow them to rest that early. They gathered in the living room and continued to gossip. I wanted to join the lively atmosphere, but I couldn't talk about clothes for more than half an hour. So, I went to the study room to surf the internet and read some novels about transmigration. I had read many novels recently. The main characters in those novels were all invincible in the end. I recalled my own experience and felt sad. I often lifted my head to look at the ceiling and asked myself, why are the main characters so invincible after transmigrating? They can kill monsters and level up quickly. But I'm just a bystander. I thought I was also the main character. However, compared to the main characters, I found that I was just a supporting character. The chatter in the living room ended, and the faint sound of someone washing up came from the bathroom. I counted the time with my fingers, then turned off the computer and walked into the bathroom. I bared my fangs and brandished my claws as I shouted, "The wolf is here!" A woman's scream and the sound of someone hitting a wolf came from inside. And so, an erotic night at the mid-mountain villa began. I woke up late in the morning. I was the only one on the big bed. They must have gone to do their own things. After I got up and washed up, Yi had prepared breakfast in the dining room. I didn't need to clean up after eating. She had always been so considerate in taking care of me. I took a book and sat in the yard to read while basking in the sun. From time to time, I would glance at the balcony on the second floor. Yi was painting her oil painting. She was wearing a milky white skirt that reached her thighs. Her white and tender thighs were dazzling under the sun. It made me, who had overindulged last night, a little restless. Her charm could always arouse people's desires. Plus, she had practiced seduction. However, I resisted the urge when I saw her painting with her black-rimmed glasses. She had warned me not to peek at what she was painting. She would give me a surprise when she was done. I was looking forward to what kind of surprise she would give me. I had been waiting for it for half a year. Just as I got rid of the distracting thoughts and focused on the book, I heard her call me from above. I lifted my head and saw Yi holding her drawing board. She smiled and said, "Come to my studio. I've prepared your surprise." Then, she entered the studio with her drawing board. Could it be a nude oil painting of those women? This thought flashed in my head. My eyes brightened. I teleported to the balcony on the second floor and entered her studio. There were dozens of oil paintings covered in white cloth hanging on the walls of the studio. I glanced at Yi, who was smiling at me with her arms crossed. I waved my hand and the white cloth covering the wall was lifted by a gust of wind. There were dozens of oil paintings and dozens of familiar faces. I was stunned on the spot. One by one, the faces that I had dreamed of appeared. Yin Bai Kong, Nongzhu, Old Ancestor Nan Ming, Hong Qi, Gu Qingyun, Wei Chunxiu, Yun Peng, Hong Tai Long, Shen Yu, Bai Changchun, and Bai Suzhen, whose white dress fluttered as she looked at me with a gentle smile. Tears welled up in my eyes. Every painting was realistic. It showed how much effort Yi had put into her paintings. I finally understood why Yi had wanted to learn how to paint. It was because no matter how good Wu Lishue's photography skills were, he wouldn't be able to capture these people. What do you think? Are you surprised? Yi waved her hand in front of my eyes. She pulled me back to reality. In reality, her breasts were full. Yeah. I nodded. I want to give you a surprise too. I hugged her with one hand while my other hand slid down her thigh under her skirt. She screamed in surprise. However, her resistance was futile. I hugged her waist and carried her downstairs. When we returned to the room, we had another long and passionate battle. After the battle ended, she lay on my chest and told me, "I want to continue painting. I want to paint every single person I can think of." I stroked her silky hair as a thought crossed my mind. After a long moment of silence, I said slowly, "I want to write a book." "Write a book? You want to write a book?" She propped herself up and looked at me curiously. "What kind of book?" "I want to write down the story between me and them. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I will forget them one day." I didn't finish my sentence as the vivid faces began to appear in my memory, the suave and elegant Nongzhu, the mischievous Hong Tai Long, the hard-working Shen Yu, the mighty demon god, the proud and unyielding Bai Changchun, and the white-clothed woman who I could never forget. Her gentle smile has always been in my dreams. Yi looked at me quietly for a while. She put her face on my chest and asked softly, "Have you thought about the name of the book? Let's call it Scum of the Cultivation World." I slowly hugged the woman in my arms. End of the book. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.